Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, General.
Yes.
Okay.
Brother Zami, would you like to make some comments as a moderator?
Okay, yes. Yeah, we'll get started. I think I was just waiting for all our brothers and sisters to join here. Are we all set in terms of technicality of it? Are we able to live stream in the Facebook now?
Yeah, Brother Jami, so we are all set. It is streaming live and recording.
Okay. And our guests are here already, right? I can see a few of them already. People are joining in as we're talking. So I think let's give 2 more minutes for a few more people to join, right? So we'll start at 7:05, inshallah.
I guess while we're starting up, hello to everyone. Before we officially start up, I don't know, my microphone wasn't on in case anybody was talking earlier.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Maybe we can start with a dua.
Okay.
From our Imam, but
yes, please. Yeah, I think let's. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Ahmed Khan, and I will be hosting this, moderating, I would say, this event today. And we have invited 4 physicians from our community. But before I go any further, Imam Anwar, if you please go ahead and start with the dua, then I can start the rest of the program. So. If you can take it on, please.
Inshallah, I'll start with Surah Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this getting together so that when we have done with it, we are much more informed of the situation which is going on, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift this trial through which the entire humanity is going through, and to make it easy for all of us, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Jazakallah, thank you, Imam Anwar. So, as I was saying, my name is Ahmed Jami Khan. I am an engineer in profession, work for General Motors. I have been a member of AMDA from the beginning. And I'm very privileged to be here, to be able to moderate this one with our physicians here, also the community members. Okay. And I like to start with a couple of words in here is that this is, as Imam Anwar said, is that this is an event that nobody predicted. It's just a pandemic that most probably 100-year thing that you see once, and it's in our lifetime. It was a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are able to pass through, but it's not over yet. We're one thing that I remind myself always is that, with the help of Allah, but we have to be also very cautious, because nobody, we have to be very careful on whenever we go out or do things, always keep in mind that, there are some thing that we have to own it, meaning the safety, for myself, for my family, and for the community. Okay. And one other thing I like to add as well is that Muslims, they have been like from very early ages, the physicians, like, they have been the leader of like, coming up with the medicine, like, as a lot of Ibn Sina and many other scientists, they came and they did a lot of advancement in the medicine that is available right now. And what I am very happy to share is that this time around, they did not disappoint, So as many of you already know that, like, this couple, husband and wife, Dr. Shaheen and Dr. Tursi, they are in Germany. They are like an owner of a pharmaceutical BioNTech, and they teamed up with Pfizer, and they are the one who are behind the invention of the vaccine that is available right now to us. One of the vaccine. And like it's a miracle. Whenever it started in March of last year, nobody anticipated that it's gonna be coming out so soon. So, Alhamdulillah, we have it now. I know that a lot of people has a lot of questions regarding it. This is one of the reasons we're here today, is to answer the question as good as we can. But Islamic point of view, I think taking in a vaccine, that's something that we is always permitted, and we should do it, for our benefit and benefit of the community. So I will not say anything more right now. I would like to introduce the speaker for today. We have 4 physicians here present, Dr. Farhan Bhatti, then Dr. Manzoor Maidani, Dr. Omar Wakar, and Dr. Farhan Haq. So let's start with Dr. Farhan Bhatti. If you want to take it on and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name's Farhan. I am a family physician in Lansing, Michigan, and I run a clinic called Carefree Medical here. And I'm pleased to be with you and looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Dr. Manzoor Maidani, please. Are you there?
Here we go. Assalamu alaikum. I am a third-year family medicine resident. I'm completing training and will be working full-time this upcoming year. I've had, I'd say, the privilege of working with COVID patients on the inpatient floor and at times on the outpatient setting, and happy to be here and share whatever, as much as I can with the community alongside these fine other physicians.
Thank you very much. Next is Dr. Omar Wakar, please.
I'm trying to start the video. It says that you cannot start video because the host has disabled it. Can you guys see me or no?
No, we cannot see you.
Okay.
Brother Anam, is there anything you can do to get the video going or not? Is your video on? You cannot do it, right, from your side? Okay. So yeah, I think
just give me some time. I will. Yeah, I think I have already enabled him.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
There
Yeah.
you go.
My name's Omar Wahar. I'm a psychiatrist, and I know all the other physicians well, and I'm very privileged to be here today. I deal with the mental health aspects of COVID, and hopefully, inshallah, I can, give some insight into some of the questions that we have forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Farhan Haq, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Farhan. So I'm actually a current training resident in dermatology. But before I, was in dermatology, I was in ear, nose, and throat surgery. And for a time, I also worked in urgent care and still actually do some moonlighting in urgent care as well. So, I'm very happy and honored and privileged to kind of be here today with you guys and answering questions. Again, also, I was a trial participant in the Pfizer vaccine study. So and I can, when the time comes, I'm happy to kind of share my experience and kind of tell you my thought process and everything like that too. And I think, again, I want to thank the organizers of the event and my fellow physicians and friends and brothers for being here today and coming together and taking an active interest in their own personal health, their family's health, and the health of the community and the ummah. So again, I really want to thank everyone for that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Farhan. So before you start, I just want to provide the format of this event today. So there will be 4 different rounds, okay? Each round, we have already received questionnaire from our community members, okay? So we'll be asking a single question to each of the guests here, and there will be answers. So we go with 4 different rounds. So each round will have 1 question for each doctors here, okay? And end of the session, if you have any question that's not been answered, if you can send the questions on the chat window of Zoom, and I'll read out this question and try to get those answers as well toward the end of the session here. But to begin with, we'll have 4 different sessions, and each doctors will get a single question, and these questions are generated from our community members. Okay, so I will start with the first one. It goes to Dr. Bhatti. The question is, if you would start with the concept of corona and its vaccine, some basics and why we need the vaccine, what are the current guidelines and what are the side effects, So Dr. Bhatti.
Sure. So Assalamu alaikum again. By now, I imagine everybody is at least somewhat aware of how the virus works, but I'll start with the basics. And of course, the why this is important is the easy part. We've had almost 500,000 deaths in the United States alone from COVID-19 and over 16,200 deaths here in Michigan. So COVID-19 is a type of coronavirus. Coronaviruses themselves have been around for a long time. Many of the viruses that cause a common cold are types of coronaviruses. The difference with COVID-19, of course, is that it's much more dangerous inside the body. So when any virus enters our body, what happens? The virus does what we call replicates. So the virus creates copies of itself inside of our bodies. And then as the virus replicates inside of our bodies, then that virus attaches itself to certain cells inside of our body. And then that provokes a response. In the case of COVID-19, the virus attaches itself predominantly to cells in our lungs and in our kidneys. And as a result, that's why people with COVID-19 can end up with, of course, respiratory trouble, breathing difficulties, etc., as well as acute kidney failure, among other things. And so as that virus replicates inside of us, it is increasing the likelihood of causing damage. What the vaccines do is they employ technology using something called mRNA. So what's this? I think one of the misconceptions is that mRNA is new and that these vaccines were created out of 9 months and this technology didn't exist before, and that's actually false. So mRNA vaccine technology has been evolving and has been being developed over the last 30 years. And what mRNA does is it uses the exact same process that the viruses use inside of our bodies. And so the mRNA codes our bodies to create a protein that's found on the surface of the actual virus. So it's not making us sick with the real virus, it's just making our bodies create a protein that's found on the surface so that in the event that we are exposed to the real virus, our immune system will recognize the real virus because of that surface protein that our body will have then created antibodies against. And so it's a novel technology. This is the first time that we've used this technology to develop a vaccine that's come to market. But the research behind mRNA has been happening for the last 30 years. So alhamdulillah that it was able to happen this quickly. But nevertheless, that's how both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines work. And I will pass it on to the next speaker, and I'll look forward to your questions.
Yeah, very informative. Thank you very much. Our next question goes to Dr. Walker. And the question here is that, what do you think a section of our population are questioning the vaccine? So let's say that the healthcare provider are putting a safety message, then why not the common public is receiving the same answer notion and are being skeptical? Now they are like questioning, like, whether the
question कर रहे हैं कि करुणा
Okay. So should we repeat it or? Okay. Okay. So pretty much the question is that, what do you think a section of our population
I
are?
can answer.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off by saying or talking a little bit about. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little cutting off a little bit, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
It's better now. Yeah.
It's better now. Okay, good. So yeah, one of the main reasons why there's such skepticism behind taking the vaccine is because, unfortunately, if you look at history, we've had some unfortunate events which have caused people to doubt, public health measures. For example, one thing that comes to mind is the Tuskegee experiment. It was actually called the Tuskegee Historical Study of Untreated Syphilis. And it basically went on between 1932 and 1972, and it was set up by the United States Public Health Service as well as the Centers for Disease Control. And it was the reason for the study was to observe the untreated course of syphilis in African American populations. So basically, they were not told that they were being given, syphilis, and they were basically, monitored to see what the course of the disease would be. So this caused a lot of uproar in the international community, in the scientific community. It was basically leaked by a paper in around 1972, and they terminated the study as a result of that. What that caused is that it led to something called in 1979 called the Belmont Report and the establishment of the Office of Human Research and Protections. It also started something that you might have heard of called IRB. These are basically, safe lines that are put together to make sure that, participants in certain studies are not, victimized or, used against their consent or, any sort of a venue like that. So it's basically we have protections in place, but Tuskegee is just one example of of reasons why people are skeptical about the vaccine, because there has been episodes like this in the past. One of the other reasons that I feel that there is skepticism is what's in the vaccine, right? A lot of, especially in the Muslim community, we're basically very, very cautious about using any sort of vaccine which might have human embryological elements in it. Is the vaccine halal? Is the what is the difference between mRNA vaccines and other vaccines? So there's a different component that also comes into it, not just based on prior historical events that we have, and also obviously there's also a fair bit of, and this is debunked, but of thinking that vaccines cause autism, and this was completely rebuked in the past, and it was a fabricated allegation that was made by I believe it was a physician out in the United Kingdom, and it was proven to be false. There's no sort of connection to it, and that I think is also something that's causing a little bit of vaccine hesitancy.
Thank you very much. So I'll go to the next question. It goes to Dr. Madoni. How would you answer to people that this vaccine were not produced in a hurry, like this vaccine were produced in a hurry within the last 9 months, and hence it should not be safe, compared to the other vaccine where it takes years and years, we still have a lot of the other diseases that's going on, still don't have a medicine or vaccine for those, So how would you answer those kind of questions that comes from our community?
Absolutely. So there's a few different reasons. I'm going to touch on probably 3 main ones. Is the one Dr. Bhatti kind of alluded to. This is an mRNA vaccine. The mRNA vaccine, we've had this technology for a while, since 2005, and we've been experimenting for quite some time on different vaccines. And really, we've been close to finding vaccines for different things. And this coronavirus is actually very similar to, it's in a subset of coronaviruses where we've heard of SARS and MERS. So this is kind of another variant of a coronavirus. And we've done a lot of research on those. But for better or for worse, those epidemics ended before we really need a vaccine. We needed to roll out with a vaccine. So all that technology was there. And to even say the AstraZeneca vaccine was the Oxford vaccine, that was a vaccine actually, like they've done all the research, made this vaccine. And what this vaccine really targets is called a spike protein that it's how the virus enters. And I believe like they've kind of just switched that protein out for this new nowadays COVID protein to attack the COVID-19. So we've had so much research on these vaccines already, these mRNA types vaccines, and we just needed to put it in motion. Also, like a lot of other vaccines, we've probably heard of live vaccines and other vaccines. They take time. You have to culture the viruses, and you have to create different products. And there's just a lot of process in creating those vaccines. Whereas the mRNA, it's a little bit more readily available. Though the mRNA vaccine is a little unstable, you have to hold it in cold temperatures. It's a lot more easy to manufacture. So now coming to the manufacturing point is you have clinical trials that develop these vaccines. And the first thing a lot of these clinical trials and manufacturers need is money. And the US government for these other vaccines I mentioned, like MERS and SARS, as soon as we really didn't need these vaccines, we kind of took away the funding. And sometimes that's something these companies depend on to proceed with creating these vaccines. And the US, we went into Operation Warp Speed, which I actually think is what it's called, and invested somewhat upwards of $2 billion into developing these vaccines. They were guaranteed before even these were done. So now that helped a few different things. They were guaranteed, so instead of waiting until the end of phase 3 or so to start manufacturing these vaccines, be like, we already got the money. Let's just start making them as soon as we feel we have a good product. So essentially there's phase 1, 2, 3, and initially there's a big brunt of effort in like these phase 1s and 2s, and where we really look for like side effects. Is this harmful or not? And as soon as in short, we found out this is not a harmful vaccine. It does work, limited side effects, and it has high efficacy. I believe what we were going for was 50%. And when we realized one dose, you could get up to 50 to 80 with 2 doses above 90%, I think everyone was really on board. And from that standpoint, this is years of research going into just, we know what we want to attack, let's attack it, let's make it. And we're still continuing to do research on this, but we've had over 40,000 people who we have data from. So there's nothing sacrificed that we can say that, sacrifice safety. It was all about, we have the research, it's safe, let's move forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And my next question goes to Dr. Hawk. Any doubt the safety of the drugs or the efficiency of the trials being conducted? What are the efficiency data of this vaccine? Like, you just said like you were part of the trial, right? So anything you can shed any lights on it, please? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a great question. So basically, what happens in a trial, a clinical trial, is that you need to show that giving the vaccine works. And so the way a trial is run, especially these, they go from phase 1, where they show that, they go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, and then they, release it for, in this case, they did emergency authorization to kind of release it to everybody, fast track. But what they do to prove that a vaccine works is that they have two different groups. One group is called the placebo arm or placebo group, and the other group is called the vaccine arm or the intervention arm of a study. Now, it's a 50-50 blind, double-blind study, and that's the highest level of prospective or collecting data as we move along study. And so what happens in this study is there's a number of individuals that are recruited to a study. And they were targeting at one point, the Pfizer study was targeting 44,000, and then they expanded it before they kind of moved on. But one arm of the study gets a placebo injection, but the people that administer the vaccine don't know what the people in the study are getting, nor do the people that are in the study understand what they're getting. It's a 50-50 chance of getting the placebo or the vaccine. Then with they administer, because there's 2 shots that are required to get an effective dose of antibody, one building upon the other. They're spaced apart by 17 to 21 days, depending which vaccine you got. And then they track what happens in the both groups very closely to see whether one group is getting COVID more or less than the other group. And, again, I want to say and piggyback off of the other, docs here, we were really thrilled with how effective both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines were. And are still actually, there's a 94-95% effectiveness in both vaccines. I mean, they're actually the Pfizer licensed the technology of the messenger RNA from Moderna to make the vaccine, and so they're very similar. You can say almost identical, except for one has a little bit of a different recipe of how much messenger RNA and how much, other ingredients and recipe in the vaccine, but they're basically the same. And so, they found that the numbers of people getting COVID in the placebo arm were like, the normal rate, it's as expected in the population, as people, even if people are social distancing and wearing masks, this is an infectious disease, people are still going to be getting COVID. The rate of people getting COVID in the placebo arm was much, much higher by a rate of, if you do the math, it's like 94, 95, and it's continuing to show that, in United States, recently they did a study in Israel. They found that the prospective data was also showing about a 94 to 95% chance. I know one of the numbers that I remember was that there were 35 cases of COVID up until that point in the trial when they first released the number of like 95%. And 34 of the cases of COVID actually occurred in the placebo arm of the trial, and only one case happened in the intervention or COVID vaccine receiving arm. So, the question whether it's effective, it's extremely effective. I would recommend it for my family. In fact, I did recommend it for my family. I knew about the safety of the vaccine as well. It's very, very, very low risk of having what we call a severe allergic response to the vaccine. It's very low risk, almost infinitesimally small. To be precise, maybe somewhere between 2.8 and 5 per million cases of having a very severe allergic response to the vaccine. And that has only been shown in people that have had an allergic response to vaccines in the past. So if people have had vaccines and they're okay with the ingredients of the vaccine, one of which is called polyethylene glycol, which is honestly, it's almost everywhere in almost every skincare product. It's just everywhere. If they've had an allergic response in the past, then perhaps they might be at a slightly higher risk, but it's very, very, very rare. It's a very safe, one of the safest vaccines we've ever had, access to. So it's thrilling to have that. Then, as far as, so it's a very safe, very effective vaccine. And again, that goes, towards the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. There are other vaccines that are in the making that work a little bit differently, but are also a little bit less effective. I think the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is coming out soon, they did have a little bit of a scare during the studies. Some people had some very rare reactions that can sometimes happen, just in general, like some nerve inflammation or swelling, some nerve problems. And the effectiveness of that is maybe about 66% versus the 94 to 95% of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines.
Very good.
So
Thank you
then-
very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the next round now. Just one reminder. I know that many of us are from the Indian subcontinent here and also Middle Eastern background. I see a lot of questions that we're talking about is that, people are not sure that they should need the vaccine or not, So if you have any friends, relatives, family, please make sure that, whatever you're learning today, pass it on, say, hey, these are extremely safe, and this is a very good idea to take this vaccine. It will save us, save our family, and save the community, So please pass it on to your relatives, friends, and family back home as well, okay? So let's go to the round two, the same format for questions here. The first question goes to Dr. Bhatti. Does the second dose give more reaction? I hear things like, hey, whenever first dose is fine, second dose, you get knocked down and things like that. What is your experience and what is your thought on this one? How it's been working so far in the second dose?
Sure. This is an easy question. First of all, so the community is aware, I would never recommend anything to other people that I haven't already done for myself. And alhamdulillah, I've already received both doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And I actually didn't have any side effects after the first or the second round. But let's talk quickly because it's a very short list. Let's talk about the potential side effects. First of all, just right off the bat, it is scientifically impossible to get COVID-19 from the COVID-19 vaccine. Because as I explained in the first question, what the vaccine is doing is it is simply using our body to create a protein found on the surface of the real virus. It's not creating the real virus. So it's scientifically impossible to get COVID-19 from the vaccine. So what are the side effects? First and most commonly is a little bit of tenderness and pain where the needle goes. When you get any vaccination, whether it's the flu shot, whether it's your tetanus shot, whether it's your pneumococcal, whether it's your shingles vaccine, there's going to be pain at the site of the injection and also swelling. So pain and swelling are the two most common side effects, and those are called local reactions. And then systemic reactions or symptoms that can happen anywhere in the body. So what are those? So that's a little bit of elevated temperature, low-grade fever, and some chills, some fatigue or feeling tired, and maybe a headache. And that's it. And those symptoms generally, if you get them, they're going to last for maybe 24 hours, and then they're going to go away. And that's because when the vaccine goes in the body and it stimulates our immune system to create antibodies against this protein that our cells are now making, the spike protein, the activation of the immune system is what you're feeling when your temperature goes up a little bit, when you feel a little bit tired, when you have some chills. That's because your immune system is busy at work creating antibodies against that surface protein. And so then after 24 hours, those symptoms go away. And yes, it is true that there's a slightly higher chance of fatigue and chills and headache after the second shot compared to the first shot, but it's still a extremely low risk, number one, and number two, it's a worthwhile trade-off to have some tiredness and some low-grade temperature for 24 hours in exchange for not getting sick with COVID-19.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was gonna say, I will take it any day, so the amount of sickness and even death, that happens, this minor side effect is always acceptable, very much. Thank you very much, So the next question goes to Dr. Wakar Omar. The question is that how will you answer to the people who are saying that the messenger RNA-based vaccine, when taken, can alter the DNA or the genetic material of human? Would you like to clarify that one, please?
Yeah, I can clarify that. I actually just thought of, I just wanted to run back to touch base real quick on the first question which you asked me. And while we were talking from some of the other doctors, I just came to my realization that another reason why a lot of people have vaccine hesitancy is because of contagion. A lot of Muslims unfortunately don't contagion. Just to really give you some background about this is that we've had a history of plagues dating back centuries, all the way back. In fact, one of the Ashra Mubashara, Abu Ubaidah Amr al-Jarrah, was one of the 10 guaranteed paradise from the Prophet ﷺ. He actually died in the plague of Amwas around 639. During the Umayyad Caliphate, where he was actually it was before the Umayyad Caliphate. He was actually in Syria, where he died from a bubonic plague, which is caused by a different organism, but a plague nonetheless. So a lot of Muslims believe that contagion doesn't exist, and whatever happens is from Allah. You can't stop it. That's not necessarily true, because there is a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ saying that if someone is in a land that has plague, they should not leave it, and nobody should enter it, which is in effect basically what quarantine is. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of people in our community, they just don't believe in contagion. You'll hear of massages being hacked, no masks, no social distancing. They're just like, whatever happens from the will of Allah, Allah would just believe in Allah. So that's one thing that you have to understand, is that if the bubonic plague has killed one of the Ashra Mubashara, coronavirus has no problem killing you. So that's something to understand. Now, going back to your question, one of the big things that people need to understand is that there's crucial differences between DNA, which is inherited from our parents, as well as the mRNA, which is made out of Moderna or the Pfizer biotech vaccines. DNA, for starters, is double-stranded, so it's very, very long, and it's bundled up very tightly inside of a cell called the nucleus. And without turning this into a biological course, the mRNA is just a single strand copy of what's of a part of the DNA, which is routinely made in the nucleus, but is then released into the main part of the cell, so the instructions can be read and made into a variety of proteins in the cell. So basically, to help everyone understand, it's like for you to make a dish like biryani or pasta or whatever. You don't know how to make it, so you download the instructions off the internet, and you basically use these instructions to create the dish. Similarly, when you get the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, it gives your body a list of instructions, so saying that, oh, hey, look, this coronavirus has got the spike protein, be ready for it when it comes, make the proper, precautions. So it basically gives your body a list of instructions on how to replicate antibodies to help fight off a virus like this. So, and when people say things like, oh, we think that, your DNA is going to be changed, mRNA, you have to remember, isn't the same as DNA, and it cannot combine with our DNA to change our genetic codes. mRNA is found in all living cells. And a lot of these strands of the genetic code, they act as chemical intermediaries between the cells in our body. So basically you're comparing apples to oranges. So there's no need for concern about it going inside and altering your DNA. And something else that's been floating around like a lot of these WhatsApp and Facebook groups is that there's 5G chips in the vaccine, and that causes you to, Bill Gates is somehow in this conspiracy theories. These are all and Sheikh Yasser Qadi mentioned this, is that these are all conspiracy theories, and if you spread them, you're going to be held accountable by Allah on the Day of Judgment. So just something to keep in mind. These are all fabricated stories. There's no scientific proof about it. And at the end of the day, trust in Allah. Tie your camel to put your trust in Allah. Obviously, the vaccine is probably our best hope of getting life back to normal. Is it 100% effective? No, but it's the risk. There's risk in everything, and getting.
I think we're having some audio issues here. So I'll
Okay.
So we'll move to the next question here. It goes to Dr. Madoni here. Could you please talk about the efficiency of these vaccines against new mutant variants coming up? We hear about the like UK one, then we are hearing about the South African one. The new variants we heard about more infectious. That's what they're saying. So we have seen some of them already made it through the USA as well. So like polio vaccine, which had so many variants as well, same vaccine worked for all the variants. So are you guys expecting that it's going to be the same for this one also, like covering all the different variants? Do you have any information on this one now?
Yes, this is a pretty complicated question, but I'll try to kind of summarize it as best as I can. The short answer is yes, it works as far as we know right now. A question a little bit to go on why there are variants. I just want to quickly go to, we've already had a small discussion about DNA and RNA. We have these DNA, a safe, protected genetic material. This virus is an RNA, so it's copies floating around. These copies are constantly replicating. That's why we have so many errors, and that's why it's causing these variants. Now, we're using a piece that this vaccine is attacking, part of the virus. It's coded for 1,173 amino acids. So that's a lot of particles. So if this variant, if these RNA particles that are floating around, if they change rapidly, and if it changes to a different virus, of those over 1,000 particles, most of that is still there. So these variants, it's showing that mostly it is working. Now, there's some details there I won't go into for the sake of our discussion, but the main thing that we're tracking right now is, do these vaccines prevent hospitalizations and ICU stays? That's a main thing, our goal with these vaccines. So from that standpoint, it's been shown even with a South African vaccine, recently there's been evading some of the immune factors that it's been working. It's been preventing from the South African study so far. So it's covered. Hopefully it does not continue to replicate in a way that these RNA viruses, we can't control it. And what we should do that is contain it as best as possible and make it not become a problem we can continue replicating. So are these harmful? And it depends how you describe harmful. They can replicate faster. They can live in your nasal passages longer. And these viral loads could eventually lead to more disease. That's been shown to how much spread is caused by these viral loads. So if they survive more or replicating more, they could cause more disease. And so that's how harmful is defined. The last part of the question about the polio and MMR, it's a good question. And these viruses do still replicate, but the thing is they do not replicate enough, and they haven't replicated enough to supersede the vaccine yet. And that would be our hope for the coronavirus vaccine now. That's why we haven't had to change out these the polio or MMR vaccines. They simply have not. There's only so many mutations you can have before the virus simply kills itself. So hopefully we can contain it, stop this replication, and the vaccine we have covers most of the bases that prevents ICU stays and hospitalization so far, currently, from my understanding.
Thank you very much. Next question goes to Dr. Huck. After taking the COVID vaccine, can we go back to normal life like 2000, before the pandemic period, so doing things like, still have to wear mask or social distancing, keep washing hands, things like that, is it like, you take the vaccine next day, you are all free, you can do whatever you want to? So that's the next one for you, please, to Dr. Huck.
So the answer is yes and no. It's a good question. Right now, you should still, again, even if you get the first dose and the second dose of vaccine, you should still continue to do social distancing. You should still continue to wear masks. You should still continue to do, washing your hands. Again, you should limit the risk to yourself and you should limit the risk to other people, because there is a very small chance, again, we know it's 95% effective. So there's a 5% chance that it may not be effective, okay? And for the 5% chance that it's not effective, and for people that are sometimes not able to have an immune response, there are a lot of people that cannot take vaccines for whatever reason, or they have some type of medical condition where they need to take immunosuppression, or they may have a weakened immune system because of blood cancer or some other type of cancer, any other, number of medical conditions. It is still recommended to do all of the, pandemic and COVID infection prevention measures for the time being. Now, I know it's very tough. It's been a struggle. It's definitely a marathon, a long run, not a sprint, right? And it's tiring. It's exhausting. We've put our quote unquote normal life on hold for, the, well-being of society and everybody. But eventually, inshallah, we will be able to have something called a herd immunity, where us, humanity collectively will have enough protection against the COVID virus, to where the virus is not going to be able to replicate and just kind of continue to spread unabated like it has been. So when we get to that point, we will theoretically be able to stop wearing masks and stop having to do social distancing and be able to go back to quote unquote life as normal. When we get there, it's still a matter of speculation. One of the things that's going to prevent us from getting there is, again, actually people being very hesitant about taking the vaccine. As we know right now, maybe about 15% of American population is very opposed to taking the vaccine. And I've seen this in my patients. I've seen this, talking to friends, family members. A lot of people are very scared about taking the vaccine. And I want to kind of reiterate again that I would recommend it to everyone. I would recommend it to my friends, my family, everyone in every circumstance, unless there's been a reaction to a vaccine with polyethylene glycol in the past. You really should take the vaccine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, now we're into the round 3, I think, time check. We don't have too much time left here, but we'll try to go through all the questions here. So the round 3, the first question goes to Dr. Vati. So let's say someone took just one dose and the dose 2 is not available, or somehow they missed it. Will it be effective, first dose itself, or that's a necessity to have the second dose, or any other reaction to the body if you just take one?
So the answer is yes, it will still be effective. It won't be as effective. It won't be 95% effective. It might be 65% effective. But it's really super important that you give me just 2 minutes to explain what this 95% number means, because it is a very common misunderstanding that 95% efficacy means that the Pfizer or Moderna trials meant that 5% of vaccinated people got COVID. That's not true at all. the actual percentage of vaccinated people in the Pfizer and Moderna trials who got COVID-19 was 0.04%. 0.04% of people who got the vaccine in both of those trials actually got the disease. So what the 95% actually means is that vaccinated people had a 95% lower risk of getting COVID compared to the control group, compared to the people in the trial who didn't actually get the medicine in their arm. So they were about 20 times less likely than the control group to get COVID-19. Even the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is coming out, which has a quote lower percentage effectiveness, the benchmark here, like my friend Mansoor said, the benchmark is preventing hospitalizations and deaths. And even the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was 100% effective in preventing hospitalizations and deaths, which is what we want. So if people get some cold symptoms, technically that means it was, quote, not effective in their trial. But nevertheless, if it was me, I would get whichever vaccine was available to me first. And then if I'm exposed to COVID-19, if I get some cold symptoms, big deal. Big deal. I'm still not going to be hospitalized, and I'm still, inshallah, not going to die from COVID-19. So really, really important that whatever vaccine becomes available to you first, that you jump at the opportunity to take it.
Thank you. So next question will go to Dr. Wakam Omar. So question is that, is it safe for people of age below 15-year-old to get vaccinated? I know that it's not available yet, but whenever it does, so is it gonna be safe or should they take it? So.
Yeah, so right now it's both Moderna and Pfizer have begun testing kids as young as 12. Pfizer began enrolling children between 12 and 15 years old back in October of 2020, and Moderna started enrolling kids between 12 and 17 in December. And both trials were hoping to enroll around 3,000 volunteers. The plan was to basically see if adolescent trials will help determine if the vaccines are safe and if there are any potential side effects, and to see if that there is a robust immune response to the vaccinated adolescents. And they're hoping to have the results for this in later on in 2021. Or at the latest early 2022. And that's they've actually started to do it for kids younger than these, in which they've started to enroll in trials. But, this is an evolving situation. We won't know the exact outcomes of these trials until later on this year. So I think it's important for kids who are within that age group to stay vigilant and to keep wearing masks and to do social distancing, wash their hands and stuff until we know the results. So, because these are still ongoing questions that need to be answered, and we probably won't know their answers for at least a little bit more time. So is the vaccine safe? Does it work in kids at that age? Those are still questions that need to be answered. And right now the answer is that I don't know, neither does Moderna or Pfizer. We're still trying to find that out.
Thank you. Next question to Dr. Madoni here. Would you recommend the vaccine to someone who are taking other drugs or had allergic reaction? Is there any kind of drugs that you're on right now, medicine, that will prevent you taking from this vaccine? So anything known right now?
Yes, absolutely. The quick answer to this is no, continue taking it regardless of what medication you are for the first part. And for the most part, if you've had allergic reactions, barring any anaphylactic reactions, you should go get the vaccine. Now, it becomes a little bit more complicated because, we have these broad recommendations, but, sometimes everyone there's individual based considerations. Now, in rheumatology, we have a lot of patients are on medications that suppress our body's own immune system. And we may be on certain types of medications for many different things, for cancer or any other variety of reasons that depress your immune system. Now, is there a question is, can these patients go ahead with the vaccine if their immune system is not as robust? Will they get as much bang for the buck from this vaccine? Now, if you ask a lot of rheumatologists, some of them may say, hey, maybe we should hold some your immune suppressant medication for a few weeks, just so your immune system can bounce back and you can have the most robust response. Now, those are, and from a broad standpoint, these schools of medicine and who dictate policy, they said to go ahead and get the vaccine, do not wait. So there may also be individual consideration based on the specialist you're working with, but no medication really right now should bar you from taking the vaccine. As far as allergies go, if you've had allergies, any type of allergies, you should always speak to your doctor, a personal doctor that you have to have that discussion. But if it hasn't been anaphylactic, if you've had any other mild reaction to another vaccine, you should get it. Now, if you've had reactions to the COVID vaccine itself, you may not necessarily want to get the second vaccine. As far as we know, I believe they recommend you do not get the second dose. Now, the two main ingredients they really only say do not get if you've reaction to is polyethylene glycol and I think something sorbonate. And other than that, if you've had other reactions to vaccines, you are generally okay to move forward and take these vaccines. And this is limited on a limited end that I have experience with. I don't know if I think Dr. Butti's a little bit more in the outpatient setting. He might advise more people and that from that experience, I don't know if you would have to extrapolate more, but as far as I know, that's my understanding.
Okay. So next question goes to Dr. Hawk. So if you are scheduled to take the vaccine and you had some mild symptoms like that's identical to COVID, so and never got tested, should we test before we take the vaccine, or doesn't really matter? Any comments on this one? Whenever you have symptom, it could be potential COVID, but you don't know. So.
Yeah, so it's a good question. People who have had COVID and or they have infection, they need to recover from the acute infection. They have to not have any symptoms before they go to get the vaccine. To protect everybody else, and I mean to a lesser extent to protect themselves as well. So one thought is that you should, of course, make sure that you're not symptomatic from COVID, which means that I think for 2 to 3 days, you don't have any other symptoms of COVID, no cough, no fatigue, no fever, no chills. There are some other, symptoms of COVID infection that can sometimes linger a little bit longer, but the immediate infection and, being able to pass it on to other people should not be there when you go to get the vaccine. Then there's also another thought that having COVID infection, now again, if you haven't had the test to prove that you have COVID infection, we can't say that you had the COVID infection. There's other, colds, even there's common colds that are caused by coronaviruses. There's flus, there's a lot of other things that have not gone away. They're still kind of replicating in the community. We can't say if you've had COVID infection or not unless you test positive for COVID. So with that caveat, that being said, there is also another thought that if you've had the COVID COVID infection, then you have some amount of immunity for 2 to 6 months. Why not allow other people who are still at risk of getting the COVID, virus? They should go ahead and get the vaccine first before I get the vaccine. And that's an acceptable, maybe we could say a delay to get the vaccine, but I still recommend that people who have had COVID vaccine, and not only the CDC and healthcare providers, all physicians will still recommend that if you've had COVID infection, you should still go ahead and get the vaccine. The thought being that you have a level of immunity, which is the antibody, which is, the way that the body fights off a virus. You have the viral infection, and your immune system will make these proteins called immunoglobulins that stick onto the virus and then allow your own immune system to kind of identify this as a threat and to be able to clear the infection. That level of immunoglobulin or immune response is a certain level that you get, you get this again when you get infected. So the level that people develop when they get the natural infection is a certain amount. They've shown that the level that you get from the vaccine is actually maybe 10 times more than you would have gotten if you got the natural infection. And so the thought is that, hopefully, inshallah, that the amount of time that you're protected against the COVID virus is going to be longer. Our best guess, people, and again, there's also thoughts of people getting reinfected. Now, if they've had the COVID virus in the past, maybe the data is suggesting that if you had the COVID virus, maybe you have a natural level of response for maybe 2 to 6 months. And perhaps, again, there's a lot of caveats in this, the vaccine, if the virus doesn't mutate, should still be covered against the vaccine should still cover the virus. The thought is that, at least for maybe a year, maybe more, should be effective. But again, we still don't know. We still need to have the data to show that the antibody is still durable in the blood and that people are still not getting infected a year or 2 out. The only way to know for sure how long these vaccines are effective is time and continued, data from the trials. So, we are hoping that it lasts longer time, but to know how long the vaccines are effective, we just don't know yet, So that's the answer.
Yeah, I think they're very good. I think that was one of the question coming from the participants here. So thank you for taking that question on. I know that Dr. Fatih has also answered a couple of the question online as well. One other question, I think we're done with the regular session here. We have a few questions. Let's see if we can pick a few here. I know that we're running out of time in here. So one of the questions coming up is that is it safe for the diabetic, high blood pressure, asthma patients? So any of you want to take that on? Is there any challenges for people with pre-condition like diabetic, high blood pressure? I know that they're the people who are more prone to get the disease and suffer more, but is there any issue with taking the vaccine for any of the people with those kind of already exist in them?
No.
Yeah, no. Again,
no. Good.
They should
easy answer there, right? Okay.
They should absolutely take it.
Okay, very good. All right. So other question came up was that there was some question about Pfizer vaccine safe for the older people, 80 plus, So there are some news report about death of few people in Norway, with the vaccine. I know that a lot of things are coming out initially when the vaccine's coming out, maybe it's a rumor, but do you see or heard anything that pointed any kind of flag for the older folks, 80 plus, So.
No, age is not a problem something that you should be worried about, actually anybody above the age of 80, above the age of 65, their highest risk, they're at the front of the line for getting the vaccine, in fact. So again, there's a very, 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 very small chance of the vaccine, being bad for somebody. Again, you really want to follow the guidelines. You really want to, once you get the vaccine, you should stay there for 15 to 30 minutes, make sure that everything is okay. But again, it's recommended to take.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And another question, I know that there's a lot of research going on this one, maybe we may or may not have all the answers, is that are people of any particular race or ethnicity more vulnerable? I know that we have seen that a lot of, especially the African American community, the immigrant Hispanic community, they were very affected, on proportionally in higher numbers, So still, I know there's a lot of research to do on this one, but do you have anything that you have seen, that kind of indicates, yes, some races or some type of people are more vulnerable to this vaccine, to this COVID-19, carrying that one? Anybody wants to take this question? I know that this is an ongoing thing. Is they've been doing a lot of research on it, so.
There's two answers to this question. Biologically, no. Biologically, every race can be equally impacted by this virus. Sociologically, of course, minority groups in this country and around the world are more susceptible to it, but that's not because of their biology. That's because of the environment that they live in. That's because of population density. That's because of lack of access to healthcare. That's because of lack of access to clean water and lack of access to food to eat and lack of access to live in safe neighborhoods. All of those things contribute to your risk of getting COVID-19. So it's not anything inherent to their biology. It's the world around them that makes them more susceptible. And so as a society, from a public policy perspective, how we help minority groups is by addressing those social determinants of healthcare in order to help those folks not be so negatively impacted by COVID-19.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's see here. Is there anything? I know that you guys are seeing the question here. Anything you want to answer? Because I know that a lot of the same questions coming back a couple of times. Is any of you want to take anything from this panel here, from the chat windows here?
There was one about the mass and vaccination and slowing things down. I really believe, you can take a personal view on this as well as the science. I really believe we do need not only herd immunity, but through infection, but really the vaccinations to curb it and avoid any variant replication and complications from this. And like how people receive in their views of COVID, people have different views for different reasons. And we also have to communicate with them differently. For some patients and certain populations, we present facts and say, this is what we need to do, this is what's going on. But for some certain patient populations, we actually need to give them hope. And I think hope to return to normalcy by getting vaccinated and, and social distancing and taking as much precautions as possible is important. And we give hope for our people in the communities to, hey, let's do this, let's get on board to get better. Let's try to return to normal as possible. Not only for the scientific base, the facts and figures in front of us, but for normal day life, we have to kind of communicate that to different people. We respond in different ways. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you very much. And one other question I know that we're over here. I just want to take, this came from Brother Ferdows, guys. The question is that, understand that the vaccine is mRNA. However, what is the base material of the vaccine? Is it an egg white or something like this one? So here's a query in here. So anybody wants to answer this one here?
I really don't know. I'll let someone else chime in as well, but I don't think it's curated like you do the viral particles. I don't think it's cultured that way. I think it's engineered. Anyone else?
Okay. All right. So I know that there are a few other questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Farhan Bhatti. I think you've been answering some of the question already on the chat line. So I will not take any more of your time. I do truly appreciate your time here. I think this is very useful discussion for our community here. We have people joining on the Zoom as well as a Facebook Live as well as YouTube. And this is very, I learned a lot, myself, I think we can take it on. One lesson here is that yes, we have a cure coming up, inshallah, but we just cannot let it go. We have to keep our vigilance on, we have to keep our eyes open. Also make sure that we do our part, to make sure that, this is contained, so we can get back to normal life sometime in the future. And thank you very much for the organizer. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Bhatti, Dr. Bhatti. Yeah.
Thank you. Just very quickly for everybody, I want to make sure that even after you get your vaccines, you still wear a mask. And the reason for this is because you can still pass COVID-19 on to someone else. you can still breathe in the virus. And it's true, you won't get sick because you got the vaccine. So inshallah, you're not going to go to the hospital and you're not going to die, but you're still going to breathe it in. And then when you can pass it on to somebody else who hasn't gotten the vaccine. So until the virus stops replicating, until enough people have gotten the vaccine, and even after you get your vaccines, you should still wear a mask so that you don't asymptomatically spread it to somebody else who hasn't gotten their vaccine yet.
Excellent. Very good point. I think this is something that, like, we have to make sure that we pay attention, So thank you very much again, and also please note that AMGA has noted that vaccine is halal for use, So I think they came out and said this one because people are questioning it. And I know that we did talk about it, but that's like, if anybody has a halal haram question, that's halal, according to them too, So just a pointer here, So. Yeah, thank you again, and have a good evening, good night for rest of you, and we'll inshallah have another session in the future. And thank you again.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.